The Metro Atlanta Chamber, we've been around 167 years in its current form. So if you think about continuity and you think about all the pivotal changes, both in the economy, both in your community, we've been there the entire time. We're actually older than the city of Atlanta, right?
Wow.
So, and we were started in 1859 as an organization to promote Atlanta to the north, to those carpetbaggers, right? And say, come down south and make an investment in manufacturing or in a business, because we're a transportation and a logistics hub. We've got all these railroads right here, so come here. So to this day, that is still our mission. It is to promote Atlanta. Now we promote Metro Atlanta, which is the 29 county MSA region across the world. So no longer not just to the Northeast, but we are all over the world telling the story. Because if you go back to the 1970s with Maynard Jackson, and if you think about the 96 Olympics, those two moments in time when Maynard Jackson really set the stage for the airport to be a global airport. Yeah. We announced our first international flights, and then you fast forward 20 years, you have the Olympics. We were blast onto the international stage. We've had 30 years of great growth because of that. And so what our job is to do is to continue to foster that kind of eyeballs on the region, but we do it more than just, you know, kind of a blanket approach. We're very strategic about how we tell our story, who we tell our story to, and what they need to know. And one of the things that I love to say, Terry, about our region is that we are authentic to who we are. And when I say that is, we'll say what may not be working. I'm not going to shy away from that. Nor should anyone else, because I think you become more authentic to your partner that you're working with if you can truly say, here are areas that we still have room to grow, and I mean like get better. Yeah. And that's why I love this community, is I do think there's a certain value system and authenticity that comes with who we are. And I am blessed to lead an organization that has been here for so long. We represent business on a large scale, and what I mean is we work on very large issues, from economic development projects like Mercedes-Benz moving their headquarters here, to Cisco locating in Midtown, to Rivian building a manufacturing plant out east of town. We run the gamut, but we also work on public policy, because you have to have a strong business climate in order to foster growth here. And then the third element for us, so you have basically growth or economy, you've got policy, which is really advocacy and business climate. That also includes talent. All of you are an incredibly talented bunch. Yeah. We want you to stay here, and we want you to tell people to come here. And then the third piece is community. And so you can't have a strong economy without a strong community. So for us, all three of those have to work together, and that's what I spend my day doing, is making sure that we have an excellent team, which we do, and then my job is to support from the ground up. I view myself as the kind of foundation layer, and everybody else is above me when I think about their work streams. So
that's awesome. And so I've heard you say that before. You cannot have a strong economy, a strong community without a strong economy,
and vice versa.
And vice versa. And you know, when I think about affordable housing, especially when it became to the forefront of Atlanta from a political aspect, it literally was during the mayoral election of Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. She was one of the first affordable
That was
housing,
one of her top priorities,
that was one of her
right?
top priorities, but affordable housing became a campaign issue. Yeah. And at that time, I had been in Atlanta probably a little less than 20 years. I'd never seen affordable housing.
You're young.
People, you know what? Y'all, I'm young.
Only 20 years at that point
in time. I'm going to say that in age too, okay? But yeah, but being in this city, just within that time frame, that was the first time I saw affordable housing actually be a campaign issue. When you think about it from an economic standpoint, when did you see affordable housing shift to the forefront of the conversation with corporations?
Yeah, and I'm going to take us forward, and then I'm going to take us backward, and then I'll bring us back forward. Think about today, the buzzword in politics right now is affordability. Yeah. Whether or not you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, whatever you are, everyone is talking about affordability, as they rightly should, right? We've had an incredibly chaotic 6 years since the pandemic. a lot of ups and downs. Different pieces of our economy have been thrown for a loop, then they settle, then something else happens. So it's been an incredibly chaotic time. So affordability right now is the political word.
Yeah.
So you can put it in all different aspects, not just housing, right? Food, transportation, education, healthcare, it's all, those costs have gone way up. So affordability matters. What's interesting for us, when you look at the assets that we talk about for this region, there are a lot of different ways that we talk about why Atlanta is great. Housing and cost of living has always been one of those. Like this, you can come and you can start your life. You can start in an apartment, renting. You might move to a rental home. You might then move to a starter home and buy your first home, so on and so forth. But that's not the only thing that drives businesses to make those decisions, right? So they want to understand what the affordability question is, so cost of living, which includes housing. They're also looking at transportation. What does it cost to move goods and people across a region to where they need to go? What does the commute pattern look like to where I want to locate and where the talent is? You also have the cost of doing business, not just the living cost. You know, what is the tax burden here? What is the cost to get insurance? What are your sales taxes? All of that factors in. And then, of course, education matters as well as healthcare. And education matters both early, K through 12, technical, and 4-year. All of that matters to someone looking to locate jobs here, because children have to have a place to learn, right, and adults have to have a place to learn. So they're very interested in that. So you bundle all of that together, and that is the secret sauce that we sell. So cost of living has always been something we've paid attention to. But like you, I think we began to see the conversation started with Keisha, Mayor Bottoms, really talking about what I would call more low-income housing and the affordable side of things in 2018? She was 2018. Sorry, I gotta get my numbers right. 2018, but I think COVID really disrupted the marketplace when we think about housing. So we certainly had challenges well before COVID, so let's be clear, but that disrupted the marketplace not only here, but across the country. Atlanta is not alone in this, because what happened, and forgive me for being technical, but for about 30 years we have stopped building. And when I say stopped, I'm being a little hyperbolic. We have slowed our pace of building. And so when you have year over year of not building a supply, but the demand continues to go up, you get a supply and demand imbalance, what does that do? It drives up costs. Yeah. And then when you add in inflation and all these other things, right, well then we get into people that can't afford a home. And when I mean a home, I mean just a roof over your head, right? And we see that with our homeless population, our unhoused population around. So we clearly see that it's impacting most segments of the economy. So for us, it was really interesting during COVID because one, at the time the interest rates were still low, labor was really tight. So you were paying almost double to get somebody to work for a company, and they could buy more in a house. They had low interest rates. So all of a sudden you had this feeding frenzy in the market, values went up, and then guess what happened? The economy kind of came down, it overheated, inflation went up, interest rates went up, and we now are in a period where we call it your mortgage bound. It's very difficult for somebody, if you own a home, to sell your home and move somewhere and get a new mortgage or new housing piece. So that in turn has an impact on the economy because talent can't move. And so we started paying attention probably early in COVID about what does this dynamic look like, and began just, you know, like all of you began educating yourselves. We'd never really gotten into the policy aspect. We were certainly paying attention to it from an economic, but like policy, what drives this? So at the end of the day, I was blessed to invite the CEO of Pulte Group, which is the nation's third largest home builder, to serve as our 2025 board chair. So he got that invitation in 23 because we work way in advance. And he began, we always have a conversation, what do you want to accomplish? You're board chair for a year. What do you want to say at the end of the year? And he said, housing, housing, housing. And I was like, we work on transportation, we work on education, but he made a really clear and salient point. For every 2 jobs you create, you need 1 home.
Yeah.
So let that sink in. So for every 2 jobs, you need 1 home. 1 home can be an apartment, right? It can be a rental home. It can be a wide variety of things, but you need a home for every 2 jobs. And I think that was somewhat eye-opening for us, that we need to have a bigger role if we're in the economic development game, to lean into how do we, we're going to have to look at the supply side at all points in the market. So that's low-income housing. It goes all the way up, because I would tell you, if you have a professor that's married to a police officer, there's a price point they can afford. Yeah. But does the stock exist near their jobs, right, with transportation options? And so it's a more complicated question. So we have been at this for about 18 months now in a true policy format, and thinking about how can we impact better affordability. And I would love to be the first city that does it.
Absolutely. I think that deserves a round of applause. and that really brings me, when you think about housing and really affordability, it really boils down to what housing costs versus what people make. Mm-hmm. And when you think, there's a report from National Low Income Housing Coalition that talks about just the state of Georgia, that a person making minimum wage in Georgia will have to work 144 hours a week, right, in order to afford a 1-bedroom apartment, about $1,400. Well, we know if you just look at Atlanta alone, it goes up. And it really takes me to understanding the families that we serve. You know, here at Atlanta Housing, we strongly believe that we have a generational opportunity to use housing as the platform to lift our families to economic self-sufficiency. But when we talk about that, we have to talk, quite honestly, about the people we're actually touching through our rental assistance. So we serve 27,000 households, about 43,000 people. I would dare say 60 to 70% of our families are headed by female-headed households, and we touch maybe 17,000 children. I would also say that 61% of our families make less than $17,000 a year. And so when I think about, you know, how do we create economic mobility opportunities for not just the families we serve, but existing residents in this job competitiveness, what are your thoughts around that?
Well, it's really an interesting dynamic. Again, I wish there was a silver bullet, right? We all wish there was a silver bullet, but it's a complex problem, which, by the way, requires a solution that has everybody at the table. And that is where I think, in some regards, we have missed the boat, because a lot of times it's policy talking to policy, or politics talking to politics, or business talking to business, and we're not all in a room around a table talking together and thinking about what solutions can look like. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the first thing that comes to mind for me, because listening to you rattle off those statistics, it's very clear that a family is impacted far beyond just housing.
That's right.
Right? Food insecurity, transportation challenges, healthcare challenges, mobility challenges, right? We all, I think, are familiar with the statistic that if you're born into poverty in certain zip codes in the city of Atlanta, you have a 4% chance of escaping, right? So it's incumbent upon all of us to think through what those solutions look like. For me, as thinking about the business community and how do we impact mobility, I always think that one of the most important levers is education. And so if they have stable housing, which you're serving right now, if you have stable housing, then leaning into education next is really important. And that is actually where business can get involved. One of the most interesting points about education to me is, does anyone know what the literacy rate is of, on average, of the children in the city of Atlanta, really just the region? We'll just take the region. At 3rd grade.
Wow.
It's less than 40% of our children can read at a 3rd grade level when they're in 3rd grade. That's across the region.
Wow.
Okay. And so if we think about that, right, you have to be able to read to learn, right? And so I think there are some simple yet tangible, impactful things that we can do as a community to not only ensure that they have stable housing.
Yeah.
And by the way, I believe business has a role in stable housing, especially when we think about our centers. Okay, I'll come back and ask me about central business districts.
Okay, absolutely.
Because some of that also has gotten the geography and the way that we have grown. But we can lean in on some of these things to make some impacts. And by the way, typically if a child is not reading at the right level, their parent typically is not reading at the right level. And one of the things that used to be really prevalent here in this community was an adult literacy push, and that has gone by the wayside as well. And so there's some of these things that we can do together that ultimately lead to economic mobility. But at the end of the day, when you're fighting for food, you're trying to make sure you have a roof over your head, trying to get your parent to work so that they can earn more than $17,000 a year, you don't have childcare. This is a complex problem that I actually believe Atlanta can solve, because I think we do big things well. But we just got to get in a room to talk about them and recognize what the unique role, right? I probably can't go and solve, the healthcare issue, but from a business perspective, I might be able to work on what are the economics around housing, what are the opportunities with education, because that's your future workforce. So there's some synergies there.
Yeah. So what that reminds me of. And again, I am young when it comes to Atlanta.
We're young.
We're young. We're young when it comes to Atlanta. you can join me in it. But oftentimes I remember when I first came to Atlanta, everyone was sharing with me the impact of the Olympics, the 1996 Olympics, on the city, specifically the neighborhoods surrounding downtown. And what strikes me is, under Mayor Dickens' leadership, and I have to say, I had opportunity to work with the mayor when he was a council person, and the energy he had as a council person.
He still has that energy. I don't know how he does it. I tell him that when I see him.
I believe it has increased.
I'm tired.
I am too. But
and it's what, 2 o'clock, and I'm already tired.
Yeah, but I don't think we have that liberty, right? Working with Mayor Dickens. But Mayor Dickens talks a lot about Atlanta being a group project. And when it comes to the opportunity we have to host the World Cup, he has been very intentional about saying that the residents of Atlanta should benefit from this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How do you see the long-term, the World Cup period coming to Atlanta, but then the catalytic long-term opportunity that it will create for our families?
Well, this is a long answer, and y'all can tell I'm not short-winded. There's a lot here, right? So I always go back to 1996 when we are going to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Olympics this summer during World Cup, right? So it's a really interesting inflection point. We saw incredible growth from 1996 to where we are today. I think we added 2.5 million people in the last 30 years to the region. The city of Atlanta actually had been losing population, and now we're back, if not above, where we historically were in the 1970s. Look at Midtown. For those of us of our young age that were here in the 80s and the 90s, Midtown did not look like what it did today.
That's right.
Neither does West Side, neither did Grant Park. Atlantic Station was I still remember coming around the curve and the steel plant being there. So there's been incredible investment, and people have been able to benefit from that. The flip side of that, we still have disconnected communities. And so I believe the World Cup can be another catalyst for having an impact in the communities that have yet to see some of that catalytic change. It really is going to be an interesting time period because it's about 38 days, which, to give you some perspective, that's about 6 Super Bowls, if not more. It's equivalent to 3 Olympic Games.
Wow.
So in terms of size and scale, this is big. Now, let me tell you all, I want you coming downtown during World Cup. You're not going to be where you can't drive. All of that will be fine because most people will be taking MARTA and on foot. And so and it's all happening in one place instead of being dispersed. But I believe that there's a program that the mayor has started called Showcase Atlanta, which I don't know if you're familiar with Showcase Atlanta, but he is very passionate about making sure that small business owners and entrepreneurs have an opportunity to access some of the work that is going to be available during World Cup. But while I tell you that it's that much time, it is actually only 38 days. So people that think they're going to make $1 million, probably not going to happen. But what will happen is you'll have small businesses that will be better prepared for not only World Cup, but when that next convention comes into town, and the next convention, and the next convention, when we have a Super Bowl. So I view what he is doing through Showcase Atlanta and the preparation of small businesses and creating a directory of small businesses, so that if you need a photographer, you need balloon art, you need a face painter, you need security, you need black car, caterer, it's all there. And those individuals have all figured out insurance requirements. You got to have a license to do business in the city of Atlanta. Some of these things. Also teaching how to scale up for an event and then scale back down. Interesting, you got to order more toilet paper if you got a restaurant. I mean, these may seem small, but they're very impactful. And so I think so just the stage that we're setting, the countries, companies, visitors that are coming, the work with small businesses, and these are all City of Atlanta businesses, by the way. Most of these are 1 to 2 person businesses, so these aren't large. And then combine that with the work that he is doing with the Neighborhood Reinvestment Initiative, the NRI. If you're familiar with NRI, right? He and council and others have identified 7 neighborhoods that have historically been disinvested in, and is probably where some of your
20%.
That your customers come from. If we can use this as a catalyst to make those investments in those communities, then hopefully in 30 years, maybe when I'm retired, 30 years and we have another big event like World Cup, we'll be able to say, look what we've been able to accomplish. And the lasting legacy will also have some real tangible, real assets as it relates to soccer. So we're going to have a lot more soccer pitches that are available to our youth that may not have access to those. If you want to talk World Cup, we can talk World Cup all day long. I'm really excited about what it's going to bring here and excited to showcase this city. We have a great city.
We do.
And by the way, we're the most prepared city. It may not feel that way to you all, but there are all these other cities and you don't get to see their preparations. Atlanta, because we do big well and we do it often, we know how to do this, and the collaboration is that team, that group project mentality is just baked into who we are, and we're ready.
So, what strikes me, so a few weeks ago I was with the Housing Authority CEO for Boston, and she said, Terri, and what really strikes me is Boston had an opportunity to host a conference this year, the Council of Large Public Housing Agencies, and they decided not to because Atlanta hosted it last year. Exactly. We do big well in Atlanta. And so the conference will actually be in Los Angeles. But what really strikes me about just doing big well, Ann Kramer came and met with us. Right, everybody loves Ann.
Everybody knows Ann. I call her the human exclamation point.
Yes, and she came in and brought her huge personality to our team. But what really struck me with Ann is she talked about the secret sauce of Atlanta, and the secret sauce of Atlanta being the way the political aspect, the civic aspect, and the community all galvanized together to make sure Atlanta can be what Atlanta should be.
Yeah, I call that our ethos. And when you talk to when I talk to CEOs that are here that have come from other communities, they are shocked at how collegial we are, how familiar we are with one another. You can go to most other major cities, Houston, Dallas, New York, Chicago, Washington, and they'll walk into a room and not know who's in the room.
That's right.
And here, they would walk in and know Terri. Not because she's got a role at Atlanta Housing. They'll know who Terri is, and they will have spoken to her, or they'll know a political individual. And they comment all the time that we have something very, very special here. I feel it's an obligation for our organization to continue to nurture that, to make sure that we've got everyone at the table when we're discussing issues. But it starts with educating our corporate community first and then bringing them along. So I think we have something very, very special that has to be protected, and it makes us who we are. It's that authentic piece.
Yeah. When I think about educating the corporate community, specifically on the work that we do here at Atlanta Housing, what guidance would you provide to us? Because we're really focused on not just providing housing opportunities, but really growing our families.
I know. I love that aspect.
Yeah.
Listen, Marshall Guest, who's my chief strategy officer, is going to kill me when I say this. When I used to do a lot of work at the State House, and we would say, if you want to build a pass, you name it, saving babies and saving dogs. I mean, it's just everybody loves babies and dogs. It doesn't matter how evil the legislation is, it'll just fly through, right? And so, when I think about complex issues, corporate community can get those, and then get them pretty quick because they deal with them in their own day-to-day operations. And so I think sometimes we have a history of dumbing things down so much that they don't understand why it's important. So think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
And so the other thing I would say is if we frame it from the standpoint of helping families, I think that tugs at the emotive side of who we all are, because we want families to thrive, right? And sometimes we may just see you, and if I don't know you and the fact that you may have a partner and an elderly parent that you're taking care of and a beloved pet, right? How am I to know really who you are? And so I think when you talk to the corporate community, a couple of things I would do. One, don't shy away from the complexity, but don't paper them to death. Like, we have a rule, 2 to 4 pages at tops, maybe double spaced, net it out at the top. Just net it out at the top, get the takeaway, and then put all your information below. Because they're pretty quick on the uptake. You give them a problem, give them a solution, they'll get it, and then inspire them with stories of success, but also things that don't work. Because I think sometimes we hear a state of housing, or we hear a state of MARTA, or we hear the state of the city, and everything is rah-rah. Yeah. And we think, wow, everything's working great. The reality is that in some sectors or some points in time it's not, and I think we have to say that, right? So there may be families that are thriving, and here are examples and why they were thriving, and then we have families that are not, and it's because of medical debt or whatever that they can't get out from under. And I will harken back to Brian John Goldstone. When that day?
Yes, there's No Place for Us.
No Place for Us,
yes.
Which was a book that I read and recommended to everybody to read. That was really instrumental for me to understand that we have so many families that are working but not thriving, and living on the edge. And so that, to me, there were 5 families. I got to know 5 families. It was very personal. So I think those are how you engage with them. And the last thing I would say is a lot of times CEOs don't know that they have their own employees that are living on the edge.
Wow.
Because you don't want to go into work and tell somebody that you're about to lose your house.
That's right.
You just want to keep your job.
Yeah.
Right? Or that you've had a spouse or a child that's got a mountain of medical debt and you're going to have to go bankrupt. Do you really want to walk into work and share that? So I don't necessarily shame the CEO for not knowing, but it's a delicate balance there that I think we have to strike.
Oh, that's good. I believe that Atlanta Housing is growing to be a people-centric organization, and not just focus on our residents, but really focus on the well-being of our team members. Because so much that we do will not be accomplished without the folks in this room.
Amen.
Literally lifting it up every day.
Yeah, our job is to hire good people.
Our job is to hire good people.
That's why I say I hire good people, I can get out of the way and do what they need and support them.